Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's No Filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, what's the best macronutrient breakdown for fat loss? That's a good question, and I'm surprised that's a question that I haven't received before. I do receive quite a few questions with regards to calories, but very few questions with regards to macronutrients. Now, unfortunately, there's not a one-size-fits-all answer here, okay? When you're designing a nutritional plan, either for yourself or in my case, for someone else, there are factors to take into consideration. Metabolism being one of them. Someone have a slower metabolism, a faster metabolism. Gender, okay? Female versus male. Age, right? Older person versus younger person. Activity level, someone who works out daily versus someone who lives a fairly sedentary lifestyle. So these are all factors to take into consideration when you're putting together a nutritional plan, whether it be for yourself or in my case, for someone else. So it's not a one size fits all answer. But with that being said, once you really assess your physique and you assess your eating habits and you say, I'm someone I know I put on fat really easily. So you might be, in this case, very sensitive to carbohydrates. So in your case, you might perform better on a low carb, higher fat, moderate to high protein diet. Whereas if you're someone like me, I have a fairly fast metabolism. When I used to train for contests, my carbohydrates were easily 500 to 600 grams per day. And I was like 2 weeks out from a show. So I never really had to go super low, but it's also because I have a faster metabolism. But I've worked with numerous clients over the years, whether I'm getting them ready for a competition or a wedding or just overall they want to lose weight, where I have to drop their carbs really low. But if I do that, then I want to make sure that I keep their fats really high, right? The fats, as I talked about on a previous Q&A, are an essential macronutrients. Carbohydrates are not an essential macronutrient, but I don't like to eliminate them completely unless I'm doing a ketosis diet with someone, which rarely I'll do. I've talked about in the past how I might put someone on a keto diet for 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what we're training for. But that's rare, okay? But what I typically start most people out with, if it's the first time I'm working with someone and I'm learning their body, I'll typically start them on 40% carbohydrates, 30% protein, and 30% fat. That type of breakdown. And then I'll make revisions along the way based on how their body's responding to that plan. Okay. If I notice I'm starting someone with that particular plan and they're not losing weight, I might drop their carbs to 30% and increase their fat to 40%. Right. So it's just, you kind of have to, be strategic here and approach the diet methodically and think, okay, what is this person's genetics, and are they sensitive to carbohydrates? Do they perform better on a higher fat, low carb diet? Protein, I typically keep moderate. If I'm dropping fats and carbs, like say I'm getting someone ready for a bodybuilding show and I have to drop both those macronutrients, I'll increase protein. Rarely will I drop all three macronutrients. I don't really do that. I'm a big fan of rotating the macronutrients on a weekly basis. So anyone that works with me online on the nutritional plans knows that I'm not really a calorie counter. I'm more of a macronutrient rotation. So if I decrease your fats 1 week, I might increase your protein 1 week. If I decrease your carbohydrates 1 week, I might increase your fats and drop your protein. So it really depends on where the person's at with their goals. And this is why it's so important to constantly do your check-ins, right? So if you're not working with a trainer, you check in with yourself once a week. Use your scale. Use progress photos. Go by, take a journal. How are you feeling, right? Hey, you lost 3 pounds this week, but you feel like crap. Well, then you probably dropped your overall fats or carbs too low. Okay. So you always have to go by, in my opinion, the scale, how you look, and how you feel. Okay, because that's going to really tell you if the diet you're using is working for you. So unfortunately, there's not a one size fits all answer, but if you're someone who's new to this and you're going to try to do it on your own, my recommendation, take your overall macronutrients for the day. 40% should come from carbohydrates, 30% from fats, 30% from protein. And then watch how your body changes or doesn't change on a weekly basis and adjust accordingly. All right. Okay, next question. Nick, are supplements necessary for muscle growth, and which supplements should I be taking if I want to put on muscle? Um, no. Okay, so when you say supplements, you got to be careful because that's a very broad term. Okay, so when I think of supplements, I think of things like whey isolate protein powder. To me, that's a great supplement. Is it necessary? No. You could get the same results from having egg whites. But a lot of people don't want to be drinking egg whites or cooking egg whites because egg whites alone don't taste very good. So, protein shake is easy, it's convenient, and it's chock full of 30 grams of protein for one scoop, very low in fat. A good whey isolate should contain no more than 2 grams of carbs and no more than 1 gram of sugar. So, you're just consuming just full protein there, right? But then when you go into other supplements, you're looking at mass gainers, or you're looking at pre workouts, or you're looking at fat burners. And to me, those are not necessary. That to me is just all filler. It's fluff. It's not absolutely crucial that you add them to your supplement stack. Okay. But they can help. Okay. They're not necessary, but they can help. So if you're someone who's working with a budget, and I tell this to all clients, if you're on a budget and you're like, well, where should I put my money towards? Should I put it more towards the nutrition or should I put it more to the supplementation? And I always tell them, hands down, nutrition, always. Okay, that comes first. You're going to get better results from eating whole foods than you will from consuming mass gainers, pre-workout powders, fat burners. Okay, so that stuff is all fluff. It's not necessary. If someone were to ask me, hey, if I can only afford to get one supplement, what should I get? Then I would tell them to get a whey isolate protein powder. Okay. Because it's convenient. You can have it any time of day. You can throw it in a shaker cup. So if you're on the go or you're in between meetings and you don't have time to consume a whole meal, you can just down a shake. Okay. Throw in a tablespoon of peanut butter in there so you get some healthy fats. Perfect. Okay. So that's a great supplement, but it's not necessary. Okay. And I want to stress that because I know there's a lot of people that get, they get kind of hooped into the whole supplement industry where they start really pumping and promoting their stimulants, their fat burners, their mass gainers. And the problem is you don't need it. And most of that stuff doesn't even work, right? It doesn't work. So my recommendation to you is to focus on the nutritional component. And if you do have some extra money on hand, then yeah, I'd pick up a whey isolate protein powder. If you want, you can pick up a good pre-workout powder. That helps as well. But I would also funnel my money more towards vitamins and minerals, things like vitamin D, vitamin E, omega 3s, zinc, right? That's type of stuff that a lot of people are deficient in. So that's, in my opinion, again, where the money should go. Okay. So if you're on a budget or you don't want to spend crazy amount of money on this health and fitness industry, I always tell people, put your money in the nutrition, put your money in the vitamins, the minerals, and if you have extra on hand, hire a good coach or personal trainer that can help guide you. You don't have to work out with that coach trainer every day of the week, but even 1 or 2 sessions a week just to make sure you're on track, hold you accountable, maybe teach you something new. I think that's a great investment. Okay. So that's my recommendation. Don't go splurge it all on supplements because most of them, I'm telling you right now, don't even work. Okay. Next question. Nick, how can I prevent muscle loss while dieting? Yeah, good question. So when you are dieting and if you're in a caloric deficit, which unfortunately most people have to do when they're dieting, right? Unless you have that fast metabolism that I was talking about in the first question, you're going to go into somewhat of a caloric deficit in order to lose weight, especially if you've hit a plateau. Okay, if you're someone who's completely new to weight training and cardiovascular exercise and you're like, I need to lose 50, 70 pounds, you don't have to really go into any much of a caloric deficit. You probably just have to clean up your diet. But once you start going along the way and you're dropping weight, you're dropping body fat, what happens, it gets harder and harder to lose that additional body fat. Once you get very lean, unfortunately, it gets harder, not easier. Okay. So you have to go into somewhat of a caloric deficit, unless, of course, you have a crazy fast metabolism, and then lucky for you, you don't. But that's not the case with most people. And most people do have to go into a caloric deficit. So when you go into that caloric deficit, my recommendation is to drop both your carbohydrates and your fats while increasing your protein. Okay. You have to remember protein only has 4 calories per gram. So you can consume lots of protein and still keep your calories quite low. So, as I mentioned in the first question, if I'm working with someone who's getting ready for a bodybuilding show or a wedding, and we're getting closer and closer to the event, but they've hit a plateau, and now they're doing their cardio, they're doing the weight training. Well, we got to change something. I don't want to give them more cardio. I don't want to give them more time in the gym. So I start to take out some calories, and those calories usually come from carbohydrates and fats. But when I take out those calories, I increase the protein, right? So that's where it comes down to, again, being strategic. And that's why it really helps to work with a good coach or personal trainer that can help guide you along the way when you've hit that plateau. Okay. Because the problem is If you go too far into a caloric deficit for too long of a period of time, and you start dropping your macronutrients from carbs, fats, and protein, your body will go into a catabolic state, and unfortunately, you will lose muscle. So you don't want to do that. And trust me, I've done that myself before. When I first started competing, I made that mistake. So you've got to be very careful. And I've talked about this time and time again. Anyone can lose weight. It's not hard to lose weight. Okay. Anyone can gain weight. It's not hard to gain weight. But to lose fat and build muscle or lose fat and preserve muscle, that is very different. And you have to take a completely different approach to how you design your nutritional plan in accordance with your training program and your supplement protocol. All right. Next question. Nick, does it matter if I consume water during my workouts? I find it makes me really nauseous if I drink water while exercising. No, it's not necessary to drink water while you train. However, you do want to be hydrated while you train. So if you're someone who finds that you get very nauseous when you're in the gym or when you're running on the treadmill and you feel like you can't consume any water or anything for that matter, food, BCA powders, anything like that, my recommendation to you is just to sip on a bit of water before you work out and then after you work out. You have to remember the muscles are 80% water. So if you're dehydrated and you go into the gym, A, you're going to actually feel weaker in the gym. And B, you risk injury. You risk a strain, you risk a tear, something breaks. Because if the muscle is tight and it's dehydrated and you're putting heavy load on it, something could go, something could give, something could snap. So you want to make sure that you're always training a muscle that's hydrated. So if you work out at say 7 in the morning, that's fine. Drink a bunch of water before you go to bed. You're going to wake up, you're going to pee, but maybe sip on a little bit of water before you go to the gym. And after you're done at the gym, just drink a little bit more water, okay? And remember, coffee doesn't count. Coffee is more of a diuretic, okay? So don't kid yourself and think, well, I had a cup of coffee, so I'm hydrated. No, no, I mean like have a glass of water, okay? So that's my recommendation is that you don't have to consume water while you're training. Just make sure that you are hydrated because you will notice that when you are hydrated, you feel stronger in the gym and you perform better in the gym. I've seen this with people. Don't forget, I've been training people for 22 years. So there's many times I'll train someone and 1 week they're bench pressing, let's say 225. Then they come back the following week and they can barely get 3 or 4 reps at that same weight. It's usually because they're dehydrated. They're not drinking enough water, right? So their glycogen storages are empty because there's no water to push those carbohydrates into those muscles for glycogen storage. So that's usually the reason why most people feel weaker when they're training. Okay. So you just want to make sure you're hydrated. So my recommendation, drink lots of water the night before and just sip on water before you go into the gym and sip on water after the gym. And that should be sufficient. Okay. Okay. Nick, how can I curb my cravings while dieting? Do you have any tips that you use with your clients? Yes. So if you're having lots of cravings, okay, and usually what happens when people are having cravings, there's a few reasons for this. One is that your blood sugar levels are too low. Okay. So you do want to make sure that you are consuming some natural sugar in your diet. Now that can come in the form of fruit. It can come in the form of certain condiments that you're using, like what I talked about, like the low sugar ketchup, for example. That does have some sugar, but it's just natural sugar. It's not added sugar. Okay. A lot of foods, good foods have natural sugar in them, and that's fine to consume them, sorry, as long as you're keeping that natural sugar range between 25 to 30 grams per day. Okay. So you really want to watch your blood sugar levels. You don't want them to drop too much. But if your blood sugar levels are normal and you're still having those cravings, my recommendation is to take a look at your fats. Okay. Fats allow the body to stay fuller for a longer period of time. They also help regulate our insulin levels and our blood sugar levels. So that's why they're an essential macronutrient because they actually help us keep energy all day long. So it's a mistake to drop your fats too low. Okay. So my recommendation is if you're someone who finds that you're craving, I don't know, maybe you're not even craving sugar. You could be craving, for example, chips, right? Maybe you're more into savory than sweet. My recommendation is to get on your fats. Okay. And what I mean by that is really pay attention to the fats you're consuming, healthy fats, omega-3 eggs, avocado, natural peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, walnuts, almonds. These are all healthy fats, salmon. If you're making sure that you have enough healthy fats in your diet every day, what you'll notice is that those cravings, they start to decrease more and more. They really do. Okay. So if I'm working with someone who's a sugar addict or someone, like I said, who's more into salt, they like savory, they like chips, pizza, all that stuff. What I typically notice with these people is they're either having too much sugar in their diet or they have too much simple carbohydrates in their diet. Okay. So I make those adjustments. I say, okay, what we're going to do here, we're going to increase your fats in the form of healthy fats, and we're going to start taking all that processed crap out of your diet. And it works. There is a transition period. It's not going to just work like that, but it does work. Okay. But you really have to look at your fats. And I've talked about this before that, in my opinion, fats are the most underrated macronutrient. They are essential. They are essential for survival. I actually think fats are more important than protein, personally. Okay. So that's my recommendation. If you're someone who finds that you're constantly craving bad food or sugar or salt, take a look at your fats and make sure that they're high. Okay. How high? Well, that's going to depend on you again. It's going to depend on your lifestyle, your genetics, your gender, your activity level. But you want to make sure that they're actually somewhat high. And I would keep them spaced out properly throughout the day. And as I talked about in the past, the only time that I would avoid fats is pre workout. So your pre workout meal, in my opinion, shouldn't contain any fats. Otherwise, I would make sure that you have your fats throughout the rest of the day, of course. Excuse me. All right. Next question. Okay. Nick, should I focus on strength training or cardio for fat loss? I've heard you say that weight training works best for fat loss, but other people keep telling me the best way to lose fat is by doing cardio. Yeah, unfortunately, you're getting a lot of people that tell you that. And listen, you can listen to them if you want to, but cardio will help you burn fat. It does. I've never disagreed with that. Okay, it does. The problem is that you have to continuously do cardio to keep the fat off. Okay. So if you want to work smarter and not harder, it makes more sense to build muscle because the more muscle that you carry, the more calories you yourself will burn in a rested state. So you can maintain a lean physique year round without having to say, oh my God, I got to go for my 30-minute run, or I have to go spend an hour on the Stairmaster or elliptical trainer. You don't have to do that because as long as you're weight training, and you don't have to weight train every day, you can weight train 3 or 4 times a week. As long as you're doing that on a consistent basis, you're going to build a foundation that allows you to have a faster metabolic rate. Okay. So it'll actually help increase your metabolism so that you're burning more calories just while you're sitting down, just while you're working at your desk. So it's about working smarter and not harder. Okay. So I've never told people don't do cardio. Cardio, I think everyone should do cardio. Cardio is great for your heart. It's excellent for your heart. I do cardio every day, walking to and from my gym. I don't run, but I walk. And it's a good 15-20 minute walk there and 15-20 minute walk back. And I'm able to maintain a lean physique because my diet's dialed in, but also because I carry enough muscle mass that I'm constantly burning calories throughout the day. So I'm not relying on cardio to burn the fat. So it's a mistake to rely on cardio to burn the fat because if you rely on cardio to burn fat, you're always going to have to rely on cardio to burn fat. Okay. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you got to do cardio. And I get it. I get it. I've heard that for years too. But the general public really don't know much about metabolic rate. They really don't know much about macronutrient rotation. They really don't know much about training splits. They don't know much about muscle mass. They don't know about going into a catabolic state. They don't know all these other factors that you have to take into consideration when you're trying to lose fat, preserve, and build muscle. They just think, oh, I got to lose 10 pounds, so I probably should go run and, consume less calories. It's not that black and white. It really isn't. Okay. If you want to make sure that you're just losing fat and only fat, my recommendation, focus on the weights. Still do cardio. If you enjoy cardio, do cardio, but don't rely on cardio to burn the fat. Okay. Build muscle. Build muscle. The more muscle you have, the easier it is to lose fat. I promise you. Much easier. And also, why work harder? That's another thing. Why work harder? I've never, I'm not afraid of hard work, but if I can get the same results in less time without putting in the amount of energy that I will in something else, why would I do that? Why would I put more energy into something when I could put less energy into it and also get the results in a quicker and more efficient manner? It doesn't make sense why I would work harder and longer, right? If you can make $1 million in 6 months or in 6 years, what sounds better? $1 million is great, but it makes more sense to try to make it in 6 months versus 6 years. So same thing, train with weights. It's going to allow you to have a faster metabolic rate and you're going to burn more calories more efficiently throughout the day. Okay. A few more questions here. Okay, Nick, how can I improve my squat form? I feel as if I'm not getting the right contraction in my legs when I squat. I'm not sure how to fix the issue. Yeah. Okay. So my recommendation, if you're doing a barbell back squat, take your shoes off. Okay. Hands down, I would say right now, 98% of my clients, actually, I think all my clients right now on my roster are squatting barefoot. Okay. The problem with having your shoes, and I don't care how expensive your shoes are. I don't care if you've got inner soles. I don't care if you're walking around with Asics, whatever you're walking around with. No shoe will ever match your natural heel, also known as your calcaneus. Okay. So that's like your palm. It's like your fingerprints. Okay. That's you. It's unique. Okay. So I always tell people squat with your shoes off. That's one thing. When you squat with your shoes off, you can really dig your heels into the ground. The second thing I tell people is to open up their stance and have their knees face towards the corners of the squat rack. You see a lot of people when they squat with their knees facing towards the squat rack. If you point them into a V and you have them going out towards the corners, you're going to actually recruit more muscle fibers in your basilaris, which is your outer quad sweep. Not only that, you're going to incorporate more gluteus maximus and gluteus minimus. Why? Because now your hip abductors are opened up. So you can actually engage more glute activation and hamstring activation. Third thing I tell people is when they squat, as they come back up from that squat, really try that mind to muscle connection on focusing on driving all your weight backwards. Now, when you do that, not only do you take pressure off your lumbar region because you're not leaning forward, you're sitting back more, you're engaging not just your quads, but you are targeting more of your glutes and hamstrings. A lot of people have a hard time feeling their glutes when they squat. It's a quad dominant exercise. But if you take those three tips into consideration and you apply them, you'll notice after a few weeks of training that you do feel your glutes more. And you actually notice changes in your glutes. I've had a lot of people work with me. They're like, oh, my butt's higher. I'm like, well, yeah, because now we're engaging not just your quads, but your glutes and your hamstrings. So take your shoes off, open up your stance, knees go to the corner. So you're creating a V squat, V stance with your feet, knees go to the corners, shift your weight back as you come up. Keep your rep range between 10 to 15. None of these single digit reps. Single digit reps are just going to build strength. If you're a power lifter, stay to single digit reps. But if you're trying to build a butt, you're trying to build your legs, I promise you the best way to do this is by keeping your rep range between 10 to 15. And another thing I like to do with a lot of my clients, I throw drop sets in at the end of each time we do squats. So if we're doing, let's say, 4 sets of squats on set number 4, I'll have them do a double or triple drop set. Okay, and if you're not familiar with a drop set, go on my Instagram. I've got tons of videos showing you how to do a drop set. Or you can also work with me online and I'll put together a program for you that incorporates lots of drop sets, supersets, giant sets, circuit training. Okay. So all this type of training, these different formats, they're not fads. They actually do work. Okay. Especially if you're someone who's hit a plateau or you're not feeling that connection, that mind to muscle connection. If you have hit that plateau, my recommendation is to change up your training style. Not necessarily the exercises. You can still do the exercises, but just change the way that you do the exercises, the sequences that you do the exercises, your form and technique. It makes a huge difference, I promise you. Okay. Nick, how long should my rest periods be between sets for strength training? Okay, so I have had this question a few times. Again, you're going to go online, and if you were to Google it, they'll tell you for hypertrophy, 45 seconds to 90 seconds, for power, 3 to 5 minutes, blah, blah, blah. Listen, most people who go to the gym to lift weights, most people, they want to see change in their physiques. Okay. Now I'm not talking to the people who are power lifters who just want to lift the heaviest amount of weight for one rep. I'm talking about people who want to transform their physiques, people who want to lose fat, people who want to build muscle. They want to look and feel better, feel healthier and look better. They feel more confident about themselves. Okay. So these are the people I'm talking to. My recommendation to you, keep your rest periods to no more than 90 seconds between sets. And this is if you're following a basic straight set program, which means you're doing one set, you rest, one set, you rest, so on. Okay. If you're doing circuit training or supersets, obviously that's going to change, but I'm not going to go into much of that because we're talking about basic straight set training right now. Okay. Good rule of thumb, in rather than time your rest periods, I always tell clients, go back to your next set when you feel about 70% recovered. Okay, and I know I talked about this before, but it's so important because a lot of people do get caught up on the minute details. Okay, don't get caught up on that. Just focus on, okay, your next set. Say you're squatting and you start off with 45 aside. Oh, okay. Now I got 15 reps. I'm gonna throw on 25 aside. So that rest period includes you, unless you have a trainer, throwing the other 25 pounds on the side, getting psyched up mentally. Okay, how's this gonna work? How many reps am I gonna get? How am I gonna engage my glutes, my hamstrings? That's what you should be focusing on, not on your phone. And that 90 seconds goes by very quickly. And some people, the more fit that someone becomes, the less rest they need. I know for myself personally, I've talked about how I squat 315. I can do that and go for my next set with less than a minute rest. And I feel the reason I can do that is because my cardiovascular endurance is, in my opinion, quite good. So I don't need to rest 5 minutes between sets. I feel good to go. Now, of course, there's going to be times where you don't always feel great in the gym and you might need a little longer rest period, or you might need to decrease your weight. But if you're resting, I should say, too long in between sets, you're allowing the muscle to fully recover and it's not going to really stimulate further muscle growth. It will create more strength because you're increasing the weight. I imagine if you're resting for 3 to 5 minutes, you're going to increase the weight on the bar, whether you're deadlifting, squatting, bench pressing, whatever it is. But you're not going to really create that lean, dense muscle that most people are striving to achieve in the gym. So keep your rest periods short. Okay. Even if that means you have to keep the weight a little lighter, do that. Don't worry about the weight. The weight is irrelevant. As long as it's challenging, you will see results. Now, obviously, if you can do 30 reps, the weight's too light. But if you're saying that 10 to 15 rep range and you're resting for 45 seconds to 90 seconds max in between sets, you're going to see results with your physique. I promise you that. Okay. Keep the training intensity high. Keep the phone in your pocket. Don't let it make an appearance because that can become a distraction. I talked about that last week on the Q&A. That can be a huge distraction. I actually put up Instagram posts just about cell phones in the gym the other day. So check that out on my Instagram, @fitcosgrove_, about how much of a distraction phones can be in the gym and how they can really screw up your results, right? Because that 90-second rest period can easily turn into 3, 5, 6, in some cases 10-minute rest periods between sets because people get caught up cruising Instagram, playing on TikTok, texting their friends, whatever. And it's just unbelievable how people get so focused on their phones rather than their workouts in the gym. So keep the phones away and stay focused on your next set. Do your next set when you feel 70% recovered. That's how you're going to maximize your results in the gym. Okay, last question. Nick, what are your thoughts on muscle mass slowing someone down for their sport? I play hockey 3 to 4 times a week and want to start lifting weights, but I'm concerned that if I build too much muscle, it will slow me down on the ice. So if you look at professional athletes of today's era, most of them, I think actually all of them, weight train. Okay. Especially hockey players. Okay. And they don't just train their lower body, they train their upper body. Now, if you go back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a lot of athletes were under the misconception that muscle slows you down. Bulky muscle, it makes me less athletic. I can't move as fast. I'm not as mobile. I'm not as flexible. And we know now that that's not true. Okay. You look at Michael Jordan, for example. If anyone's watched the Last Dance documentary that was on Netflix a few years ago, I think it's still up there. Michael Jordan was getting his ass kicked by Detroit Pistons in the playoffs, right? And why was he getting his ass kicked? He's a great basketball player. He was a great basketball player. Why was he getting his ass kicked? Because he didn't have as much muscle, right? So they were pushing him down on the ground. They were throwing him around the court, and it affected the way he played, right? So what did he do in the summer? He started weight training. Came back the next year, played the Pistons, was a whole different player, right? Because now he had muscle. Now you couldn't push him around as much. But it didn't affect the way his performance was on the court. In fact, it probably improved his performance on the court. So I think a lot of people, especially in basketball, they saw that and they saw the benefits of weight training. And now in today's era, you look at basketball players, hockey players, soccer players, they have muscle and they have lots of muscle. That muscle is not slowing them down. So that was a misconception that really was around back. If you look at the athletes of the 60s, 70s, and the early 80s, there was a lot of those athletes, they were just skinny, right? Not much muscle. But now it's almost a necessity to have muscle because we know now that muscle is going to increase your performance, not slow down your performance. I have muscle, but I don't feel I move slower. I can run up a flight of stairs, no problem. The people that you see who are, let's say, overly muscular and have a hard time moving or walking, or you see the guys walking like this, those are the roid boys. That's all they are, roid boys. the steroid monkeys, and they're using lots of anabolic steroids, and that's obviously not healthy. That puts a lot of pressure on your heart, your kidneys, your livers, so on, right? So, but we're talking about people who are natural athletes, not enhanced athletes. So building muscle actually adds to not only your physique, but it adds to your performance because the stronger you are, the better you're going to be at your sport of choice, whether it's hockey or basketball, okay, or soccer, whatever it is, it makes a difference. So, my recommendation to you would be to definitely start lifting weights and don't be afraid of building muscle. It's not going to slow you down. If you look at hockey, I work with a lot of guys who play hockey, not professionally, but I work with a lot of guys who play in rec leagues or whatever. They just play with pickup games, and they notice from weight training with me, their strides on the ice are longer. They move quicker. They have more explosiveness, and they attribute that to all the squats, all the lunges, all the step ups, all the side shuffles, depression lunges, elevation lunges, hack squats, leg press, all that stuff that we do they attribute it to that because at the end of the day, their form and technique, that's all related to their sport. But the strength and power, that's from the gym. So it's crucial, in my opinion, if you are an athlete, that you should be in the gym, in my opinion, at least 3 to 4 times a week training with weight, minimum. And in your off season, you should be in there almost every day. Okay. And that's another thing. You'll notice a lot of professional athletes when it's their off season, whether they're a hockey player, basketball player, soccer player, they're not on the court or on the ice rink or on the field playing soccer, hockey, basketball. They're in the gym. They're giving their body a rest from the sport, but they're building their body in the gym. Okay. And that, in my opinion, that's a great athlete because they will be stronger. They will be more mobile. They will be even more flexible because weight training actually increases your flexibility and mobility because you are taking your body into different planes and ranges of motion. Okay. So I think it's crucial. I think it's a mistake if you're an athlete to not be weight training. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, December the 23rd. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your diet, training, or supplementation, to please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. I will see you all next week. Bye for now.